Hello and welcome to the Twins Mummy NI podcast. The show for parents handling the joys and challenges of twins, siblings and the beautiful chaos of family life. I'm your host, Carla, mum to twins and a baby, sharing real stories from the front lines of multiples motherhood, raising twin toddlers and their baby sister. Just like you, I'm right in the middle of it, sharing the chaotic, joyful and sometimes overwhelming reality of motherhood. Each month, you'll hear real stories, practical tips and expert advice to help us all feel less alone. You are very welcome to the Twins Mummy NI podcast. Have you ever wondered what a twin pregnancy compared to a singleton pregnancy is like? Well, in this month's podcast, we are discussing just that. I want to share a story with you. For some people, the thought of pregnancy or giving birth isn't just nerves. It's a real fear that can make the idea of having a baby feel almost impossible. And that fear can feel really lonely. Often it is shaped by stories that we've heard, childbirth scenes on TV, or simply the weight of not knowing what our bodies are capable of. Sadly, that experience is very real for many people. Today, for the first time, I will share that the person in that particular story, well, that was me. I was afraid of pregnancy, and I was afraid of childbirth. If you have ever felt something like this, please know you are not alone. Your feelings matter, and there is room for both fear and hope in this journey. Throughout this episode, you're going to hear deeply personal recordings that I made during both of my pregnancies. And today, for the very first time, I invite you into a part of my journey that I've carried quietly for a very long time. 3 years later, I'm sharing these very personal recordings, not because it's easy, but because somewhere, someone listening might hear them and hopefully feel less alone. And if that's you, I want you to know this. You are not alone, and you never have been. I am happy to say that today, all 3 of my girls are here in the world and are living beautiful lives of their very own. That truth is one that I hold with profound gratitude, and it exists only because of the extraordinary care, skill and kindness of the team at the maternity unit at Antrim Area Hospital. A big thank you to Dr. Rebecca Barkley, Donald Chandranath and Shona Hamilton for helping me to achieve what at times I thought was impossible. I also want to thank Jean, midwives Lindsay Hunter, Shelley Shepherd and Amy Gordon, and also Anne McCann. This story is ours, but their support and care carried all 5 of us here today. Before I begin, I just want to say that everyone's experience of pregnancy and childbirth is unique to them. This is just my experience. Before I was pregnant with Laura, I often wondered, and sometimes worried, about a second pregnancy. Will we have twins again? What will it be like chasing twin toddlers whilst being pregnant? And how will my body handle another C-section? So today I'm going to talk to you about that journey. 2 pregnancies, 2 completely different journeys, same person, but 2 very different experiences. I have some exciting news. I just found out that I am pregnant. I can't believe it. I genuinely can't believe it. When I first found out I was pregnant, I had no idea that in a few weeks' time, we would find out some news that would change our lives forever. I filled out the form, I sent it off to the maternity unit, and then I waited. And those first few weeks were very daunting. Nothing happened. Nothing felt any different. So I decided to just take things one day at a time. Then the day finally came, my very first ever antenatal appointment. It was a completely new world to me. I found it quite daunting walking into a maternity environment. Hospitals had never really been familiar territory for me, so walking into a maternity unit felt very overwhelming. My husband and I arrived that morning, not knowing that our lives were about to change forever. I still remember the smell as we walked through the front doors of Antrim Area Hospital. That unmistakable mix of cleaning products, canteen food, and my old school science lab. I climbed the stairs to floor C, and I sat nervously in the waiting room. We were the only ones there that morning, and as I looked around, the walls were covered in posters about things like hypnobirthing, breastfeeding, antenatal classes, and I knew immediately in that moment, I don't belong here. I know nothing about this world. All of a sudden, the door opened. A midwife smiled and called us in. Her name was Emer, and I will never forget Emer's kindness. She could clearly see my nerves that morning. Lying on that bed, I glanced at the monitor beside me. I'd only ever seen one of these monitors on TV before, but here I was. It all felt very surreal. The cold gel hit my tummy, and suddenly everything felt very real. I waited, and I waited. There was silence. I sat up, panicked. Immediately my mind went straight to the worst, asking, what's wrong? Then my husband burst into laughter. I turned to him and said, it's not twins, is it? It was. Emer turned the screen towards me, and there it was, 2 little tiny dots on the screen. I experienced shock, joy, fear, all of these human emotions all at the one time. Suddenly, the pregnancy wasn't just a pregnancy. It was a twin pregnancy. And that label came with such weight. Extra appointments, extra monitoring, extra risk, extra everything, in fact. You know, 1 baby would have been life-changing, but 2, I was so overwhelmed. So I decided to slow everything right down, and I promised myself that I would take everything 1 day at a time. Weeks passed, and soon I was attending the twin clinic at Antrim Area Hospital, and each appointment came with nerves. The waiting rooms, the scans, the cold gel, the anxiety of listening for reassurance that both babies were doing okay. As the 3rd trimester arrived, the conversations that I'd been avoiding soon began. Childbirth. And how I coped was by counting each week and only focusing on that week at a time. Each one brought me that little step closer to meeting my babies. We chose not to find out their genders, saving that surprise for the day that they would arrive. It was something joyful to focus on instead of the fear, because fear had always been there. Growing up, I heard lots of negative stories about pregnancy and birth. I never really heard anything positive. So I carried that fear with me. The fear of birth, the fear of hospitals, of even saying out loud that I was scared. I told myself that I should feel grateful here. I should feel excited. And I shouldn't feel afraid. Looking back on that now, how wrong I was. The day that I finally opened up to my consultant midwife, Shona Hamilton, was a real turning point for me. I told Shona the truth, that I was afraid. And you know what? Nothing fell out of the sky. Nothing bad happened. And instead of judgment, I received kindness, understanding, and support, which for the first time ever was like a breath of fresh air. Together, the midwives, the twin consultants, Dr. Rebecca Barclay and Donald Chandranath, and Shona Hamilton helped me to break pregnancy into little manageable pieces. Week by week, step by step, we faced the fears together, all four of us. And I focused more on what I could control and less on what I couldn't. And what I mean by that is, I did little activities that reduced that fear. For example, when I was in the waiting room, things like colouring in, listening to music, keeping busy, and looking after my body. They're small things, but they really mattered. I gave birth to my twins at 38 weeks and 4 days. And here's the truth. Of all the things that I worried about beforehand, not one of them came true. Not one. And if there's one thing I want you to hear, it's this. Every pregnancy and every birth experience is unique. Somebody else's story does not get to define yours. Feeling anxious or feeling afraid or overwhelmed does not mean that you're ungrateful. It means you're human. You know, it's no secret on the Twins Mummy NI podcast that I have felt very afraid of pregnancy and childbirth. So to find out that we were expecting not one, but 2 babies, it really escalated that fear to a brand new level. But I am happy to say that thanks to the wonderful team at the Twin Clinic at Antrim Area Hospital, the team who supported me throughout both my pregnancies and births, that Isla, Aria and Laura are here in the world today and enjoying a nice life of their very own. The biggest surprise of all, it's when I spoke up. When I spoke up, I realised I wasn't alone. So many women feel exactly the same way. And that really surprised me the most, to realise that I wasn't the only one feeling that way. So if you're listening today and you feel that way too, please know that you are not alone. I, for one, was one of those people. I was there where you are now. And I am very glad that I decided to speak up about my fear and receive the right support that we all so rightly deserve. Please know you deserve that care and that you are never alone. I am pregnant again. Just in complete shock. I don't know what the journey ahead looks like. It is very early days. It's all a little bit surreal. Yeah, I am nervous, but I'm excited as well. This time round feels very different. I am afraid, but equally I'm going to remind myself of the fact that I have done this before and that I can cope and I can manage with whatever comes our way. It is a real mixed bag of emotions. When I I later found out that I was pregnant again, this time with one baby. The experience was completely different from the start. At the scan, there was one heartbeat. And instead of shock, I felt a real sense of calm. This morning is quite a big morning. It is the first scan on this new pregnancy journey. I am very nervous. I don't know what to expect. Hopefully we'll be getting good news today. I really hope we hear that little heartbeat today. That's the first thing that will definitely be on my mind. And the second thing will be on my mind, will it be twins again? Let's see. At the minute we're not sure. You know, a lot of my symptoms were quite similar to the last time. You know, a little bit of cramping, a little bit of nausea, is definitely very tired, and similar symptoms the last time, but sure, who knows? But I'll just be so thankful to have a healthy and hopefully very happy baby. I would be just so thankful for whatever comes our way. And like all things in life, I'm just going to take this in my stride. So fingers crossed, all will be well. I say it'll be a very emotional day for me. When I found out I was pregnant again after the twins, I think my brain automatically braced itself for another big experience. But I didn't realise just how different this pregnancy would feel. So when we found out that we were having a Singleton pregnancy, my first reaction was, whoa, this is very different. It's not what I'm used to. I wonder how this will go. And being honest, there was a part of me that would have liked to have had twins again. Because I know, hear me out. Because having twins and a twin pregnancy, well, that was normal for me. But I was excited to experience what having one little baby would look like, as it was such a different experience to our first. And I wondered just how I would manage the difference. But what I didn't know then was that this pregnancy would slow me down. It would make me pay attention in a way that I had never done before. And somehow, that turned feelings of fear into a feeling of relief and pure joy that I wasn't expecting. And I was able to actually enjoy this pregnancy a little bit more and not worry about being in the high-risk category that I was in when I was pregnant with the twins. This pregnancy was much slower, and I was very grateful for that. Having carried twins first really changed how I approached this pregnancy. I trusted my body in a way that I'd never before. I knew what it was capable of. I knew how to listen to it. And I knew that I didn't have to fear every single sensation. There was a quiet confidence this time round. I wasn't Googling every symptom, I wasn't questioning every appointment, and I wasn't wondering if I was doing it right. Instead, I felt grounded, at ease. And can I tell you, that made a world of difference. I let go of the pressure to do everything perfectly. And I thought to myself, you know, I've never once questioned how my own mum handled pregnancy and birth. So why should I? And I rested in the knowledge that things would work out okay. And that they did. Well, I'm just home from my appointment for my first scan up at the maternity unit in Antrim Area Hospital. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's good news, but I'm a lot more relieved from the last time that I was talking to you. So we've had our little scan this morning. We have one little healthy baby there this time round. So not twins this time. So we have one little baby. And I am so thankful just to see the little baby on the monitor. I
I was very nervous this morning. I'm going to be completely honest with you, actually a lot more nervous. And I think that's because I was more aware of what's going on and what would happen. My husband and I were sitting outside waiting until we were called in, and then one of the early pregnancy midwives called me in and just asked me lots of questions, about my previous pregnancy. I had to say that yes, I had a twin pregnancy before. Very fortunate that one of the doctors who had delivered Ayla and Aria before happened to be there today, so I was very, very thankful to see a familiar face. So Donald was there, and I asked if it would be okay if he could come in and help me with the scan, and he did. So I was very fortunate and very thankful for that. It makes all the difference when you're in a situation when you're so nervous and you have a friendly, warm, familiar face there. It really does help. I was very nervous. My legs were shaking, my hands were shaking, and I had a few tears as well, just because I was so nervous. Donald came in and he was very friendly, and he explained a few things what would happen. You would think, having come through a twin pregnancy before, that you might have a little bit more confidence to be able to do it, but that certainly wasn't the case this time round. But having come through a pregnancy before and come out the other end and have two little babies here at home, it made me appreciate, the real impact and the meaning and the importance of this journey. So I lay back in the bed, I closed my eyes, and I just kept thinking of Ayla and Aria, and hopefully that I will be able to bring another little sibling home to them, and that's what got me through. I was just so thankful that the scan went really well, and I was glad it was over too. But it was just lovely to see the little baby and to hear the little heartbeat. You were able to hear there just how nervous I was and how I found the difference between the first scan, finding out we were expecting twins, to the first scan we had with Lara in our Singleton pregnancy. Both two exact same experiences, but my feelings towards both of them were very, very different. Let's talk about the physical side of things, what it's like carrying multiples compared to one baby. For me, being pregnant with twins was surprisingly manageable. It is very possible to have a good experience with a multiples pregnancy. I am thankful to say that I did, and I have spoken to many mums of multiples who also had a good experience. But I will say that everyone's experience of pregnancy is unique to them. This is just my story. Maybe it's because it was my first pregnancy and I had nothing to compare it to. And in some ways, I'm very thankful for that. My body was doing double the work. It had 2 placentas, 2 heartbeats, but somehow I didn't really think of it as double. My focus was simple. Reach the finish line and bring our 2 babies safely into the world. And yes, I was afraid. Hospitals were new to me. The twin clinic at Antrim Hospital had more appointments than I could count, and every visit reminded me of how different this pregnancy was. Sometimes that fear let itself creep in and shape the experience. But this time round, with my Singleton pregnancy, a conscious choice not to let fear drive the journey. Instead, I surrounded myself with a supportive medical team who I trusted. I worked with people who spoke encouragement instead of scary stories, and armed myself with the right information and knowledge that helped me to feel more empowered and less overwhelmed. And that shift made all the difference. I could focus on the joy of pregnancy more rather than feeling consumed with all of the what if thoughts. The physical side of my pregnancy with Lara was very different to my first pregnancy. And here's the part that surprised me. My body adapted beautifully. I listened to it. I rested when I needed to. And I ate to nourish it. And here's the big one. I stopped comparing my journey to everyone else's pregnancy experience. There were moments of discomfort, sure, but there were also moments of joy as well. My twin pregnancy was consumed with thoughts about feeling 2 babies move, seeing them on the ultrasound together and knowing my body was doing something extraordinary. The second time round, instead of fighting my changing body, I learned to respect it. And that made the experience much more enjoyable. My physical experience during my pregnancy with Laura was quite similar in some ways, yet different in others to my twin pregnancy. My bum didn't grow as fast the second time round, and I didn't experience any morning sickness either. I felt a little bit lighter, if that makes sense, and more mobile this time round. And the big one for me, turning in bed at night time, especially during that third trimester, was much easier too, thankfully, I have to say. I'll give you an example. I did feel more tired this time round, and that was because I was running after twin toddlers during my pregnancy, which in itself was a little blessing in disguise, and I'll tell you why. During my first pregnancy, all I thought about was getting to that next milestone. Where the pregnancy with Laura, I was so busy looking after the twins, I didn't really have time to overthink everything, and I found that the time went in so much quicker. I worried a lot beforehand as well about how I would manage looking after the twins, especially during that final trimester, but I have to say it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Like many things in life, when you're actually in that situation, you just find a way through. I think the biggest difference between my twin pregnancy and a singleton pregnancy was the awareness second time round of what to expect. I felt confident in certain things, but not others. But what I will say is that I felt fully supported and cared for by the wonderful staff at the maternity unit at Antrim Area Hospital. I think it was because I was more aware the second time round about what actually happens during the pregnancy and the birth. And equally with that, it did come with its pros and cons. For example, I felt more empowered and more confident, which in turn helped me to speak up and actually advocate for myself if I did feel afraid. However, I did notice that I worried about normal, everyday worries a little bit more the second time round. For example, what it might be like having another C-section and what that might mean for my body. However, I needn't have worried. My experience was very much a positive one. During my final trimester, it was picked up that I had a low-lying placenta. And I remember the day very well when the doctor shared that news with me. I was so worried. I didn't really know what that meant whenever they told me. I was quite anxious for a number of weeks towards the end about this, but I did arm myself with the right information and I made sure to talk to the maternity team if I felt afraid. And this really helped me a lot. They guided me on what to do if I ever noticed a little change, and I tried to focus more on that instead of worrying about all of the things that might or might not happen. Everything went very well. And thankfully, we had no issues. And I have to say, my overall experience of pregnancy both times was very much a positive one. You know, if someone asked me to compare the physical experiences of my pregnancy, I guess this is how I would describe it. Overall, there wasn't really much of a difference between the two pregnancies for me. I was more tired the second time round, as I mentioned, but I think that's purely because I had children to look after this time whilst being pregnant. My pregnancy bump did grow at a much slower rate the second time round, but having said that, I didn't really feel much bigger with the twins. The usual symptoms for me did crop up, so I was constantly running to the toilet, especially at night time. My cravings of orange juice and chocolate were the same for both experiences. But overall, there wasn't much of a difference between either pregnancy, which I was really surprised at. I did feel, however, that my body knew what to do this time round. I felt that it remembered in some ways. Look, we've been here before, and it knew exactly what to do. And I did feel that I had a little bit more energy this time around as well, especially during that third trimester. But overall, I suppose I decided to let go of all of the expectations and pressure that I put on myself unnecessarily. And I just let my body do what it needed to do to get Lara here safely. And I rested easy in that knowledge. There is something empowering in finding confidence doing things a second time round. And I was glad that I did find the confidence to advocate for myself and speak up if I felt that I needed to. Physically, a Singleton pregnancy did feel gentler. I was still tired and I was still uncomfortable at times. Pregnancy is still pregnancy. My body, I noticed, changed more gradually. And that space, that physical space, allowed me to slow down and actually enjoy the pregnancy much more this time round, instead of this idea of a race towards the finish line. But despite all of these differences, both pregnancies did share one thing in common, and that was loneliness. I've decided to lift the microphone and record the next instalment of this little series that I'm recording about my pregnancy journey. This week is quite a significant week in that journey, insofar as I have officially reached the 12-week mark yesterday. And at the end of this week, I will be attending my big 12-week booking scan. It's such a milestone for me to reach that 12-week mark. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I found the first trimester very lonely for a number of reasons. I would always wait until we reach the 12-week mark and after book an appointment before we share the news with our family and friends. So it's very strange knowing that you're pregnant, but only yourself and your husband knows that news. And whenever you're out and about, you're meeting friends and family, it's so strange that you know that you're pregnant, but they don't know, and that there's a little baby growing in your womb. So that is very strange. But I also felt during this trimester that it is just the natural cycle of pregnancy, but at times I felt that I wasn't pregnant enough for somebody to be able to help me. Now, that is right and wrong in some ways. If anything does happen in the first trimester, I know that I can lift the phone to the early pregnancy unit, call them, discuss how I'm feeling, maybe what my physical symptoms are, and then go from there about what the next step would be. Now, I was very lucky I haven't had to do that so far, but there were at times I felt it's nearly like a desert island, I think, the first trimester, and that definitely doesn't help with the fear and the worry. So my scan is coming up in a couple of days' time, and I'm very nervous about it. I'm hoping with all of my heart, number one, that there'll of course be a little heartbeat there, and that all will be well. I feel very nervous and anxious around scans. It's strange because I love to be able to see the baby and hear the heartbeat, but that's all of the worry and the thoughts and the what ifs beforehand. It always seems to beat me, and then it's on to the next month and the next month to get through that hurdle. But it is something that I definitely do feel difficult. This time round, the first trimester has felt very long. I did find out quite early on that we were pregnant. The past 12 weeks have just felt like such a long marathon, but we have reached the 12-week mark, and in a couple of days' time we will find out what the information will be from the booking appointment. I suppose after that we probably will share the news with our family and friends, those that are closest to us, and there is a certain amount of nervousness about that as well. But I wanted to have a little chat with you about that, the loneliness of the first trimester. Have you ever experienced that yourself? I think it's different whenever you attend your booking appointment and then you have all the little appointments after that. For me, I always feel very secure. There's a plan there's an appointment. I know when the next appointment's coming up. If there's anybody that could share any advice and how to manage the mental load of the first trimester, please do share it with us, because it is something that I would love to learn more about. I certainly did try my best on the days that I did feel sad and lonely and worry and hope that that everything was okay, I did take the opportunity to speak to my husband. Again, I suppose because not many people knew, or nobody really knows, that we're pregnant at this stage. It's hard to lift the phone to a friend and say, you know, this is a situation, I'm worried here, can we have a little chat? And that's another part of the first trimester, nerves and loneliness as well. But I did have a chat with my husband, and that did help. I noticed once I got a good night's sleep and I woke up the next day and just reset and had a fresh perspective, everything seemed to be much better. It's different being pregnant this time round, obviously, because I have Isla and Aria. Last time round, I was pregnant with no children, so it's a completely different ball game this time round. But because I'm so busy with Isla and Aria each day, I notice the days are going in that little bit quicker and the weeks are going in that little bit faster, so that is helpful as well. And I think that will help me during this pregnancy and as it progresses, to just focus on the task in hand each day and taking care of Isla and Aria as well. I do talk to them, and I will say to them, Mommy has a little baby growing inside her tummy, and now Aria is walking around the house saying, baby, baby, baby. So I think Aria might be telling her family and friends before I tell them that we have a little baby. So I just sort of need to watch that as well. But it'll be interesting, you know, the girls will be turning 2 very shortly, and by the time that little baby's here, they'll be about 2.5. So I'll be really keen to see what their understanding is and what that'll be like if they when they meet this little baby as well, which is quite exciting. It's lovely for them to have another little brother or sister. So yeah, I just wanted to lift the microphone and just have a very quick chat with you, because it was a significant week, and I wanted to chat about the loneliness of the first trimester and just, you know, really hit home that can be a lonely time for a lot of women out there, not just people who are afraid like me. It can feel like forever, and there's no real appointments or plan in place until you reach that 12-week mark and attend that booking appointment, you know. So I think, you know, there's a lot to be said about that. Whether there was something that we could look into to help that, I'm not sure. Maybe there is. I'm certainly not familiar with it anyway. But it is, the first trimester is a lonely old time, and I am very glad to have reached the 12-week mark. I don't really know why I felt so alone in pregnancy. Maybe it was because pregnancy felt such a huge thing for me. There were times that I did feel so overwhelmed that I isolated myself. Fear was always there in the background for me. So what I did to help myself was focus on 1 week at a time. And that helped me quiet the worry, to quiet the overthinking and the what if thoughts. Gosh, I remember that first trimester with the twins very well. There were few appointments and there wasn't really much to do except wait and wait to your very first appointment around the 12-week mark. And I feel that long wait to get to the 12-week mark is where the loneliness first began for me. During my twin pregnancy, I felt like I was running this big marathon, counting down each week to reach that finish line. Where this time, with a Singleton, it was very different. I was counting up, and instead of rushing to the end, I slowed down. I gave myself the permission to actually enjoy the experience a little bit more. Now, that was such an alien thought for someone who spent so many years afraid of the unknown of pregnancy. I compared the 2 pregnancies constantly. 1 heartbeat instead of 2, fewer appointments, different medical teams. But I reminded myself I can step outside of my comfort zone and I can handle this. Now, there were moments when I thought, look, I've done this before, but I still feel unprepared here. I had no real expectations. You know, comparing the 2 pregnancies, I realised there wasn't a better or a harder experience. They were both the same, yet completely different in their own unique ways. I think I was more afraid the first time simply because I had no experience of pregnancy before. With the twins, everything was brand new. But with the Singleton, there was familiarity. which did help in some ways. The appointments were familiar to me, a planned C-section, but being honest, that didn't erase the fear completely. I worried about the twins as well. Did they feel left out? Did I have enough energy to be able to work with them whilst, I was pregnant? But looking back at that now, they were completely fine. Life didn't fall apart. What mattered was that we managed everything, and that was enough. What I loved most was giving my girls another sibling. I'd always longed for a big family. I was an only child myself, and now my daughters have each other. And that thought made every difficult day worthwhile. Every worry, every fear, every lonely moment, it was all part of something bigger. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. Well, that's it for this week's podcast episode. That is part 1 of this story. Stay tuned next month for the second part of this conversation. Thank you for your time today. I will join you next time for a chat on the Twins Mummy NI podcast. In the meantime, take care and remember there is always hope.